Hey, Sandy, how's it going?
Good. Great to see you, Charles.
Oh, no, it's great to be seen and great seeing you as well. So, Sandy, we're going to dive right in. When I took a look at your background to sort of say, how do I start to tee this up? I laughed and said it would take me all of our time to go over what you've been doing over your career. And I said, I'm going to summarize it, right, as best I can, right? Because you are known in the industry for being a technical expert or having high level of technical expertise, very high business acumen. You've led in marketing, you've led in sales, you've had business units that were responsible for profit and loss, not just domestically, internationally, Canada, United States, the Caribbean, if I remember correctly, Latin America. And then once again, sales, customer service, product, strategy, management, finance, HR. I can go on and on. You've done it on both sides of the aisle from the technical standpoint, as well as leading business units. And I want to get a sense of how did you get that blend of both strategic and tactical over so many disciplines and still understand the technology?
The technology for me has been the core that has built on top of selling skills. And also, I could never, ever have all these opportunities if it wasn't for great teams around me that I've been part of, as well as fantastic, long-lasting friendships with many CTOs out there who I do go to when I say, I don't quite understand, explain this to me, so I can understand it. And, so you take that foundation and lifelong learning and continue to push yourself and be curious about the technology. That's the one thing that I love about our industry is it's always changing. It's always growing. When I started in the industry, I started in the very first fiber optics. Now we're taking fiber to the home.
Yeah.
And we never would have thought that the cost of a laser could get to the point to taking it to the home. So it evolves, and as long as you continue to learn and be curious, that is what will grow. And again, it's the good team that you surround yourself with. And I've been so fortunate, and it's been great to see team members of mine over the years go into different roles. I have one partner in business that just became the CFO of a company, and he was probably taught me more about finance than he realizes to run that P&L. But he was a right hand to the business. And again, it's from asking questions, that curiosity. It'll allow you to just build on one skill after another.
So, let's peel that back a little bit more, right? Because it was over so many disciplines. When we say sales, you had over $1 billion in sales for one company. When you go over to marketing, when you go over to your technical disciplines, you have truly scaled each of these throughout your career. If I talk to some of the individuals in some of the different disciplines, how would they reflect back on you as a leader? What would they say?
My number one piece of advice in leadership is to be collaborative. I am the biggest believer in listening to what those around me know. And I remember when I took over global marketing for Eris, which is now part of CommScope, I remember going, I just went from the advanced technology group to global marketing. Like, what is the CEO asking me to do? Nevertheless, it was probably it was a role that I had that I just thoroughly loved. The team was fabulous. And I learned so much that allowed me to help all the other businesses that I led after it from a marketing perspective. Yeah. And it's by truly listening. And one of my favorite things I always tell people, especially now that I'm serving on boards, and I always tell people, when I ask, what do you think about something? Believe me, I know what I think, but I'm doing that to understand, what am I missing? What am I not thinking about? Because that has been such a great, it really helps you see things in other people's perspective. And again, taking that collaborative approach, I might have thought, hey, I have this solved. but boy, I've just listened. I've asked this question to, say, my head of product management or customer care, and I'm going to make a slight adjustment. And as you know, I'm a sailor, so it's that little bit of a degree, a turn of the helm, that then helps take us on the right path and the right course for success.
Got it. So you are known in the industry for being one of the most influential, some would say one of the most powerful leaders in our industry. And I want to read to you a quote for a second. Inclusiveness and equity starts at the top. Companies that build diverse boards of directors will create diverse executive teams. These executives must then pass a culture of inclusion, becoming mentors and active sponsors of diverse rising stars. Drive your leaders to mentor women on business and financial acumen, and methodically sponsor candidates for stretch or new assignments. The one thing that the media industry can do to be more inclusive and equitable is, from the top down, give women a chance, mentor, sponsor, partner. Now, I'm sure this could apply to more than just women, but let's take it for where it's at right now, because this defines a portion of how you lead. You are leading from the top, and this is.
Well, and I've been very proud to have some of the most diverse teams. And what I'm thrilled about right now, being on the board of Minim, I am at the board. Our board is extremely diverse. I just love it. I'm not the only woman on the board, and we have, people of color. So it's fabulous to have that diversity. It makes companies better. So once you start at the board level, you want to see that in the executive team. And you want to see it the whole way down through the organization. But if you get the right people in those ranks, they're going to grow diverse teams. So that's why I believe it's so key at the top. And then I always think about mentorship and sponsorship. And I've been very blessed to have many mentors, informal mentors in my career. And mentors, I always think about advise. Sponsors are the real magic, I believe, for your career, because they not only, they'll give you advice, but they tend to be an advocate and a promoter for you. And so they're your champion. And that global marketing role, I was really surprised when I received the call from the CEO asking me if I would think about taking over global marketing. He said, we were in a meeting with my team and the CFO mentioned your name. And as soon as your name came up at the table, everyone went, that's what we need to do. That's what a sponsor does. And so it's so key that we have sponsorship. And I encourage all leaders to really actively think about it. When I'm in meetings, I try to, if I know people on the team, even within Minim at the board, and I know some of the next levels down, I really try to promote where I know really good work is being done, because I want those people to have visibility and their names to be out.
You told a story one time, and I'm not going to steal your thunder, so I'm going to let you come back and say it right now. It was around NAMIC and some sponsorship opportunities. Can you sort of dig into that?
I'll never forget when I was preparing for this, Charles, I thought about my NAMIC experiences, and I had a very memorable event. Time Warner Cable, which is now part of Charter, was receiving a diversity award from NAMIC at the NCTA, the large cable show that we used to have. And Glenn Britt was receiving the award for the company. He was the CEO at the time. I was an account manager. And again, I had a mentor and sponsor. The head of global marketing at the company said, hey, come to this breakfast where Glenn's getting this award. You are on the Time Warner account. We need people. And of course, at a trade show, breakfasts at 7 o'clock are not the most popular. And we were the only two that showed up for our company. Time Warner's business for it was a small, we only had, I think, 3 seats, but we were the two that showed up for those 3 seats. And I remember her saying, after it was ending, she goes, you've got to go and congratulate Glenn Britt. And I said, I'm just an account manager. He doesn't know who I am. Well, she took me by my hand, brought me up, and she introduced herself to Glenn Britt and introduced me along with her. that would ended up being the start of a long relationship and friendship actually with Glenn. And Glenn was a huge champion, and the Time Warner organization was so diverse at the executive team and board level. He was there before anyone else. And to share how our friendship evolved when we were going through a transaction, when I was at Eris, we wanted to quickly get in front of Glenn and share with him the company we were acquiring. And the CEO said, "Can you get a meeting with Glenn this week?" You don't get on those types of CEO schedules this week very easily. And so I remembered I called Glenn. Of course, I think I was in the advanced technology group at the time. And I said, "Would you, be kind enough to meet? We want to just share, get your opinion, make sure we have your concerns." And he's like, "Of course." And I know he was aware when he said yes to that meeting, he was really helping me out. And he also sat in that meeting and said, "She better be here when all this is over through the acquisition." So that's sponsorship again.
At the
So
highest level.
Glenn,
Yep.
led, and from many ways, he's just a dear, dear friend.
So
Unfortunately, that didn't live long enough after
right.
retirement.
We were reflecting previously about the fact that you are on boards, right? And so, you talked about being on Minimum board. You're on the advisory board for Affinity. I think you're an advisor for the investment committee for SCTE, but I think that's sort of phasing out now, right? You're on the board for NCTA, one of the most powerful boards in the country, and you also chair the WIC Network Global Board. And with all of those, and with everything that we've just talked about in terms of your accolades and your experience, we were at an event, I think it was last year, and you were on a panel. And what stood out to me within all of that conversation was a point where you said that even in certain boards, you still felt like you had to find your voice. Can you dig a little deeper into that for us?
Well, I think, it's always when I've been asked to join certain boards, and I do think it's one of those things that sadly so many people deal with, is that bit of imposter syndrome. Do I belong here? Why? And of course, in the technology space, being often the only woman at the table, that can also be even more unnerving, because again, you're what's different. As many of the NAMIC members know exactly how that feels. And being different, you really think through your actions. And what's interesting, and I would encourage anyone, when you're in any of those new situations where you just aren't quite sure, where you don't know, one, I go back to what got me into this industry is steady, right? So I would read my board materials and I would know everything I was supposed to have read and done before each of those meetings, to make sure I knew my stuff. Because if you know your stuff, that's first, that helps you, feel more confident. And then, it's about when the time's right, and I would encourage anyone, trust your gut and speak up. Because at some of these board meetings that I was very nervous going into, and that I did speak up, and I would ask a question, and asking that question made actually the meeting better.
Yeah.
And at the end, when the chair came to one of the boards I was most nervous ever of being on, he's like, "Thank you so much. You really brought a lot of insight to us in this meeting." And I realized really good boards in this example are made up of a real blend of people with different backgrounds, right? So there's somebody on the board that's an attorney often. There's somebody that's been a CFO. There's different skill sets, and we each come, and I'm coming from the technology side and from having led global businesses. So it was on a global discussion, and I was able to add something that I saw from working in Asia. And that was a unique perspective, because out of the board members, I probably worked the most frequently in Asia at that meeting at the time. So that, trust that gut, know your stuff, and speak up when it's time.
You know, it's funny. A lot of NAMIC members, and definitely by extension, I'm going to say women, have to deal with bringing their authentic selves to the workplace. And so, you know what you're strong in. Um, what's funny is in that meeting when you asked that question, if you were able to honestly poll individuals to see who really knew the answers, it would have probably been less than 50%. I'm just making that up, right? But because you were able to say, I'm confident and I'm secure in who I am, I'm going to ask this question. And it made the meeting, right? It made the meeting that much better. And so I love when we have conversations about people feeling the strength within their own character, within their own personality to bring their authentic selves to the workplace, to the meetings, where they can feel the strength and character that says, I don't know this. I didn't have an opportunity to do research, and it may be paramount to this meeting right now. So we don't have the time to go away and then come back and say, oh, here's information that we could have used right now. And so you just ask the question. I try to do that myself, and I've had a lot of success with that. So it's just a confirmation that even at the various levels that individuals are at, we all still feel the same. So I appreciate giving that feedback back to myself and to the audience. I want to switch gears just a little bit over because I know I have a techie in here, and so I want to talk to your technical side for a second, right? Because I'm old enough that I helped bring in the 3G wireless a revolution. Early to mid 90s, helped go from 2G over to 3G in a past life. And I remember, always looking at what's going to be the killer app. What's going to be the killer app? I don't know if you remember that time period where everybody's trying to figure out, well, what's going to happen with these phones and all the other things, right? With 3G specifically. And so now we're in another technical revolution or evolution, if you could say, right? Where you start talking about the blockchain, you start talking about Web 3.0, cryptocurrencies. Now, and yes, you could talk about Bitcoin, but I'll keep it back to crypto. And the rate of adoption is faster than what we had back then with the Internet 1.0. And so, I was doing some research and it was talking about how retail, gaming, NFT, I mean, things that are happening below the surface that when they come to pass is going to take everybody by storm. So what are your views? What do you see, whether it pertains to the metaverse, blockchain, etc.? And then if you could localize it down to the communications industry, I'd appreciate that.
Well, the number one thing that is at the heart of everything going on right now in Web 3.0, NFTs, blockchain, cable's the foundation, right?
Mm,
Without high-speed internet, we wouldn't have these things.
true.
Broadband has truly changed our life. And as we get to 10G, it's going to continue to change and evolve, especially with these new technologies. And again, I go back to that foundation of being curious and that lifelong learning. When I first heard of metaverse, I was like, what is this? I'm not a gamer. I don't have time for gaming. But as I started digging into it, very much like the early days of the internet and Web 2.0, we now have Web 3.0. So it's what's coming next. So it's going to change our experience with the internet. And it's going to be in some virtual reality type of things in the metaverse. And it's going to have, the non-fungible tokens, the NFTs, that are items that we can, acquire potentially in our virtual universe. And you used your blockchain, cryptocurrency to do it, which right now I think 37%, I just read this yesterday, 37% of all crypto holders do not have traditional bank accounts.
Yeah, especially outside.
So that is, we're going through a huge transition. You got to be curious. You got to be looking into it. And I'm excited. I've been working with Next Media Partners on really what's the metaverse? What does it mean? And every large company needs to be looking at it in some form at this point. It's early. I will tell you, it's kludgy. I got my first NFTs and I was like, oh my gosh, my mother for surely could not do this. And until we get things easy for somebody that's not with a technical background, It's still, the adoption's still going to be slower, but it's coming. And when I think about all of it, it's really more digital marketing channels.
Yeah.
So as we go into this virtual world, it's how do we market? I mean, Gucci just came out that they're looking. I mean, I think I'm going to need some Gucci shoes in person and in the VR world. Buying real estate is people are looking at, hey, could I make money from billboards and things that I own in the metaverse, just as you do. It's digital. It's going to happen. I encourage, try it. I've done we did at CES, a lot of our meetings in the metaverse with clients. And it was great because it forced clients to use it and who had never done it. And you didn't have to have the headset. Your experience would be even better if you had a headset in that world. But there are applications out there that you don't need a headset. So again, I just encourage to try, because it's a digital marketing channel and it's going to be monetized. And this is the best industry to figure out how to monetize it, because we're also enabling it if it wasn't for 10G that we're working on.
Yeah, it's funny. Just a quick point on that before we go to the next, is that I read where, you mentioned Gucci and the fashion show that they had that had a digital twin that allowed for you to go through their showroom and pick items. But they were looking at not just Gucci, Nike, Reebok. I mean, you name it, everybody's there, right? We're looking at the fact that they said they're probably going to have more things virtual than they will have physical at a certain point. And then when they see the highest grossing items in the digital world, they can then say, hey, let's translate that over to, the physical world, which, now you're talking about scales of magnitude in terms of overhead reduction, et cetera. And the other one was the digital twin of a manufacturing facility. They built it in the metaverse, bolt for bolt, and then they started to put their processes through it to figure out, well, what processes make sense. It wasn't an absolute, but it gave them enough information that they could look and say, these are the things that we may have to look out for. Mind blown. So we're going to have to double click on that at a later date, because this is so much to talk about there. And you already hit on the future of work to an extent. Do you want to drill any deeper on that? Because, same as you doing some research, there was a company that bought 40,000 headsets and gave it out to their employee base and to their customers so that they could save on airfare. Because once they realized that having meetings in the metaverse were of value, not for everything, but for certain types of functions. I mean, you could talk about concerts and all these different things. One last item there. We golf in the metaverse. Me and a group of guys, we literally golf in the metaverse. They have Golf Plus through, I forgot the chain, but the one thing that let me know that it was here to stay was when we were talking, somebody's avatar was behind me. And I turned to look at the avatar while I was talking. Like, this is voice over IP. What am I doing? Right? But it's that immersive that you would turn around and say, hey, from spatial, there's a lot of unpacking that needs to happen for individuals. And I know as a person who's involved in NAMIC, I'm going to make sure I'm going to bring that to our audience, because you want to see people get immersed in the technology in different variations of it, so that they can't say, I didn't see this coming.
Exactly. And I do think from having so many meetings at CES in virtual reality, because some of my partners were at the show and I was virtually from North Carolina, you really have to pay attention.
Yeah.
And so, we would be walking, showing different things in our meeting suite, and you have to keep up. You're just keeping up. And I didn't even have a headset and I was trying to keep up. So it really, really made you pay attention. Now, the thing I missed, being that, starting from sales in my career, are the facial recognitions.
Okay. Yeah.
Nevertheless, you could still see in some cases, for those that had headsets, you could see when their body would go, like, oh, or they go, wow, you could see it. So it is a different way. And I do think everything goes back to foundation, right? You've got to know your business, you've got to know your numbers, and you have to know where your industry's going. And this is just one piece of keeping up with where we are going with the technology that our industry is enabling.
Yeah. So we're going to go out on this one here. You mentioned sailing earlier, and so I know that sailing and the beach are two passions of yours. Are those your primary de-stressors, that lets you say, okay, burnout's around the corner of all these different things that's going on. I need to just keep burnout away. How do you de-stress? How do you avoid burnout with all that you have going on?
So the most important thing to me is our family and friends, right? And I've been always about work-life integration. So many of my friends are at work, as well as, then I get to come home and be with my family. And when I'm with my husband, I want to be by the water because that ocean just seems to fill my soul and re-nourish me to come back. And I always joke every weekend I want to be by it, in it, or on it, depending on the temperature. And so, sometimes it's riding my bike for 20 some miles beside the ocean. That's a pretty nice ride. Nice. It can be hard. And it's because it is hard, it makes your mind think of other things. And sometimes I also come back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've just solved what this company needs to do for their tagline. Or, you'll have, when you clear your head, it's so key from that aspect. And Charles, one of my favorite quotes too about the water is that, ships are safest at port, but it's not what ships are made for. And so, to thinking about our conversation and diversity, it's about diversifying your career, right? And doing different things and taking those strategic risks. Because when I've said yes to certain opportunities, it definitely was not the safe yes. And that, I got on that ship. I thought it was a good ship and left port. And that's what you have to do with a good team on board.
Sandy, it has been my pleasure. There's some more unpacking that I'm going to try to tap you on the shoulder behind scenes for, just because, I see kindred spirits in terms of certain technology conversations that we could have and other conversations as well. But when they say that you are highly influential and a powerhouse in the industry, they're not joking. We only scratch the surface of what makes you and what's made your career and the advice that you give, not only to people, but to large companies. When I say large companies, we're talking, some of the largest in the world, let alone in our industry. And so we thank you for giving us your time, your energy, and your knowledge and wisdom. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. And we need to keep bringing as many people of color and diverse candidates with us to the table.
I appreciate you.